been active in politics until now. And that's because I'm very, very conscious of the fact that the freedoms which my late husband, my parents, my grandparents fought for this country to have its independence, has just been given away. Nobody asked our permission. There was never any time at any election over the last 30 years when we were asked, shall we give this bit away? Shall we give that bit away? Never happened. At every stage, stealth has been used to actually take away that which is ours. It's the same, because the only difference between those parties is based upon the colour of the deck chairs. It ain't based upon philosophy. All of them adopt the same philosophy, which is essentially more of Europe. You'll hear arguments, certainly from Mr. Cameron, saying, oh, no, we're going to push back Europe. From a man who said that 5 years ago, we have now got more than 3,000 requirements, laws, dictations that have come to us from Europe, and he's implemented them. If he wanted to push back the bureaucracy and the power of Europe, why didn't he start then?
Yeah.
We've also got the situation where Mr. Cameron said he was going to manage immigration. Excuse me. He was going to manage it to the point where instead of hundreds of thousands of people who are coming here, we were only going to get tens of thousands of people. Last year, we had 250,000 people. That's enough people to build 2 towns the size of Cheltenham and a bit. That is immense pressure on our infrastructure. If you think about it, the building of schools, hospitals, the provision of social services, care for the elderly, these things have to be planned years in advance, in some cases decades in advance. And the people who do that planning, the actuaries, the accountants, the civil servants of all kinds, they are basing what they're doing on known projections. No one, 10 or 15 years ago, knew that suddenly we'd have 7.5 million more people in this country, all needing to the planners. The fault rests squarely with our politicians, because despite the rhetoric, and my goodness, there's an awful lot of that, despite the rhetoric, they have sat on their hands and done nothing. Why? They are not affected by it. Let's be fair. If they want attention from a doctor or from any kind of medical service, they will get it. They will get the same attention. They'll say it's through the National Health Service, but they'll get the same attention as any one of you or I would get if we paid for it. They will say, oh well, we're doing all our best to cater for the needs of everybody. But they're not. They cannot, because they don't have the money. The truth is, folks, we are bust. We don't have any money. The projection is that at the end of this fiscal year, well actually at the end of 14, I think, April 14, we will have 1.499, so nearly £1.5 trillion worth of debt. That's an awful lot of noise. It's a huge amount of debt, and that's going to be paid by some of us, but more importantly by younger people, by all our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren, hospitals, schools, whatever, roads. The deficit is running, this year it's projected at £91 billion. £91 billion. £91 billion. That amount of money is being borrowed because we are not earning enough to pay ourselves the standard of living we are giving ourselves. Why? We're not very productive as a nation. Why? Many of the people that are coming here and taking jobs here, and even the government would have to be collecting from us all the revenues it already takes. That is not sustainable. What's the answer? Well, it's actually quite simple. You will hear many politicians all arguing about angels on a pinhead, all saying, well, we'll put 2 billion into the health service, all saying, well, we'll cut this, we'll trim that back, we'll put something more in here, there and everywhere. It's rubbish, because they're not addressing the central issue. And the central issue is that as long as we remain part of the European Union, we have to pay out, obviously, 8 or 9 billion, the figure rises each year net, as membership fee, just to get Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne and a few others at the top table. That's their membership fee. It's like a golf club for exclusive people. We're paying it. The other thing that our government has committed itself to is giving 0.7% of our GDP in charitable donations to the rest of the world. UKIP says, yeah, let's support healthcare. Let's support immunisation against preventable diseases. Let's support clean water. He's not in the business of supporting some very, very dodgy regimes and providing helicopters and flats in Paris and goodness knows what else to some really, really doubtful people. And what we're saying is that money, instantly we're talking 15, 20 billion pounds, that money could be spent here. So the health service needs 2 billion, take it out of the 20 billion. Other things we're saying, if we come out of the European Union, one of John's particular colleagues, Professor Tim Condon, has estimated it costs us in the UK 185 billion pounds a year in lost production, in overburdening legislation that is denying industry the opportunity to flourish. 185 billion, that's including our membership fee. Those onerous burdens on business are not sustainable for us. We need to say we want that money back. We want that money here in the UK, in our productive businesses and industries. If you just think about that a moment, 91 billion is our deficit, 185 billion is what we're losing. So half of that would wipe out the deficit in an instant. And then you can say to yourself, well, we need to spend more money on the health service. We'd have about 80 or 90 billion pounds to play with. That's an awful lot of money. The health service costs us about 110 billion a year. So we'd have almost double the amount of money, if we chose to spend on the health service. I'm not suggesting that would be the wisest thing to do, but necessarily we'd have that money here. And, importantly, we could control what we do with it. If we want to prosper, people talk about us as saying, oh yes, well of course in UKIP you're very insular, you're just little Englanders, you don't want to look at the rest of the world. We do! We're actually saying there are 53 countries in the Commonwealth that we could do business with, and they're growing economies. The European economies are moribund, they're going nowhere. We should be trading with our Commonwealth partners. They have a heritage where we have a similar business culture, we have a similar ideology in terms of how we go about our lives. We should be working with those people. We should be working with the growing, the progressive, not with the moribund, the sclerotic, which is Europe. So, I say to you, if you're interested in democracy, having back your power, having back the opportunity to make a change at the ballot box, think about make a change at the ballot box. Think about the 7th of May. It's a known fact that people who are taken as hostages, after a little while, they start to identify with their captors. even to the extent that if they are unshackled, unfettered, they will not try and escape. They will simply, the mind is shackled, they will stay. We've become like that in this country. We have progressively, over 40 years, allowed ourselves to sort of say, well, we can't dare go through the cage door. Well, we can. We must. If we don't take the opportunity that the 7th of May gives us of putting that cage door open, that's the one day this year, the one day perhaps in 5 years, when the door will be open. We can go through that door. We can go together through that door and we can change things. We can say, okay, we're going through that door and on May the 8th, we're not going to let the powers that be shut it again. We're going to go through, we're going to stay through, we're going to make our point. We are going to make a difference. We're going to start running our own country in our own way for our own benefit. And that's what UKIP is saying to people. This is the alternative. Because to go around the route we've gone round before, we will end up with more of the same. We will end up going further and further backwards instead of being able to go forward. We are not a party that is backward or little Englanders. We're a party that is saying, welcome, let's trade with the world, let's be part of the world, instead of this narrow, restricting, confining thing which Europe has become. Of course, be friends with Europe. Who wants to be otherwise? But actually, run our own show the way we run it. One of the things that distinguishes British people of all backgrounds is our inventiveness, our curiosity, our wish to actually explore. And that's something that we've been incredibly good at over the centuries. Actually saying, let's see what's beyond. Let's have a look around that corner. Let's explore. Let's devise new ways of doing things. We are an incredibly inventive, powerful nation. And together, I believe, we can recapture that. So I'm saying to all of you, think about this. Think about on May the 7th, coming with me, walking with me, actually going through that door, keeping the cage door open, so that on 8th of May, the rest of the powers that be, the Westminster elite or whatever we want to call them, actually have to take notice of us. They have to recognise we're here, the people's army. Very much for your attention.